All right, ladies and gentlemen, time for our final steps in the stoichiometry journey. All right, so I have in previous videos and lectures introduced you to the diagram here and the fact that this part right here, grams to moles, is that part of the scaffold, grams to moles. This part right here, moles to moles, is this part of the scaffold, moles to moles. And this part right here, moles to grams, is this part right here, moles to grams. All right, so we're going to do what we always do. We're going to start with identifying the unknowns and the knowns. So, what mass in grams of glucose is produced when 3 moles of water reacts with carbon dioxide according to this equation? So, what mass in grams of glucose? That is your unknown. So we're looking in the first 2 parts of the scaffold for mass in grams. Excuse me, this is our unknown. Apologies. We're looking in the last 2 parts of the scaffold for mass in grams unknown. So your unknown is always going to be either here or here. Well, clearly, mass in grams of the unknown is right there. So there is our unknown. There is our unknown. And we can put it in question mark. Our unknown is grams of C6H12O6. Our unknown is grams of C6H12O6. Continue to read the problem to find the known, because the known is always going to be in the first 2 boxes. You're going to identify the known, whereas the unknown you'll identify in the second 2 boxes, which we already did. Okay, so when 3 moles of water, so there is our known. So I look in the first 2 boxes to identify where moles of the known is. And of course, there's moles of the known. So moles of the known is my known. There's my known. And that is 3 moles water. Okay, 3 moles water. Now, from before, we know that this part of the diagram is this part of the problem-solving area, right? And we know that in this part of the problem-solving area, our known is always moles. Therefore, our unknown is going to be moles of the unknown. So what we've got is what I'm going to call an interim unknown. It is sort of an unknown that you are doing in the middle before you get to the final one. So my unknown, my interim unknown, is going to be moles of C6H12O6. C6H12O6. And we know from before that whenever you are working in this middle part of the scaffold, you're always going to be working with the mole ratio, right? And so our mole ratio here is going to be moles of the unknown divided by moles of the known. All right, well, moles of the unknown, C6H12O6, is there. That's 1. So we're going to have 1 mole of C6H12O6. And then moles of the known is H2O. There's H2O. That's going to be 6. So 6 H2O are going to give me 1 C6H12O6. So 6 moles of H2O. Now, watch what happens. My moles of H2O cancel, right? It leaves me with moles of glucose, and moles of glucose is what I wanted, right? So I'm going to do that calculation, 3 divided by 6, which is obviously going to be 0.50 moles of C6H12O6. And that is going to be my interim unknown. Okay, so I'm going to put a little box around it that's going to be green to fit with my use of green for this interim unknown, right? Now, here's the key to the whole thing. The unknown from the first box becomes the known in the next box, okay? So if you can wrap your head around that, you got everything. So what is my known here? Well, my known is moles, right? So I'm going to take this unknown here, and I'm going to move it to here. 0.50 moles of C6H12O6. Okay? That is my new known. Now, at this point, moles of the unknown, right? Moles of the unknown. This is where I am. So I'm trying to go from this box right here, which is moles, I'm trying to go to grams. Well, when we're going in that direction, what does it tell us to do? It tells us to multiply by the molar mass, right? So we are going to do the molar mass for C6H12O6. Now, I've already calculated that, so I have it available, but of course at this point you're going to have to do the calculation yourself. You're going to go, it's going to be 180.156 grams per mole. All right, so we are going to multiply by the molar mass, just like it says. Let me get this colors correct. Multiply by the molar mass, just like it says there. Okay? So, 180.156 grams per mole. C6H12O6. Now, what happens when we do that? Well, the moles cancel, right? It leaves me with grams, and grams is what I wanted. So I'm going to do that calculation, and I'm going to round it to 2 decimal places, and when I do, it's going to be 90.08 grams of glucose. And that is my final answer. So basically what this told me was, if I put 3 moles of water in here, then I am going to get 90 grams of glucose out the other side. Okay, so there you go. Now, we're going to move on to the next one, using exactly the same skills, exactly the same techniques. So here we go. How many grams of hydrochloric acid are used in the reaction of 50 grams of zinc? So, First thing we're going to do, we're going to try to find the unknown. How many grams of hydrochloric acid? Okay? How many grams of hydrochloric acid? So that is my original unknown. Now remember, you're looking for your unknown in the last two boxes, right? So I'm looking for grams as an unknown. That's not it. That's moles of unknown. This is mass, grams of unknown. So there I am. That is my unknown. This is my unknown. It is grams of hydrochloric acid. Okay? Are used in the reaction of 50 grams of zinc. 50 grams of zinc. Now remember, you look in the first two boxes for your knowns. So I'm looking for grams as a known. Well, there it is. Grams as a known in the first two boxes. So there we are. Known is 50 grams of zinc. All right. So obviously our unknown's all the way over here. So now we've got to deal with this first. So we're taking the mass, we're changing it to moles. So if you look in the diagram up here, we have mass, we're changing it to moles. Now if you zoom in on that, you're going to see that the way that you do that is you divide by the molar mass, right? So we're going to have to know the molar mass of zinc. Now, of course, that's easy because you can simply look that up on the periodic table. So the molar mass of zinc is 65.38. It just happens to be one of those that only has 2 decimal places. All right? So we're going to identify moles of the known, right, as our sort of interim. Yeah? Oopsie. So what am I looking for? I'm looking for moles of the known. What is the known? Zinc. How do I get that? I'm going from moles to grams. If I go, I'm going from grams to moles. Apologies. Going from grams to moles. Doing that, I'm moving that direction. That is divide by molar mass. So I'm going to divide this by 65.38 grams per mole of zinc. Now, when I do that, the grams cancel. I'm going to end up with moles, which is exactly what I want. So I'm going to go ahead and do that calculation. And that calculation is going to give me, to 2 decimal places, 0.76 moles of zinc. Now remember, that's an interim, right? So I'm going to use that green box again to show that this is not my final, right? This is not what I want at the end. But that interim unknown is going to become the known in the next box, right? Just like we did it here, okay? We're doing it here. This becomes that known. All right? So that known is now going to be 0.76 moles of zinc. All right. Now, this middle box is always the same. Okay? So I've got moles of zinc as my known. I'm going to be going to moles of the unknown. Right? So I'm here. So that means, just like above, I'm going to be using the mole ratio. which is moles of unknown divided by moles of known. What was my unknown? My unknown was hydrochloric acid, right? HCl. How many are there? There's 2, okay? So I'm looking, I have moles of the known, I want moles of the unknown. So I'm looking for moles of hydrochloric acid. Now, I'm going to change my colors here to make it a little easier to follow, right? So this was moles of the known, and then it became here. So those are both green. They're the same. Then I'm going to put this one as purple, okay? Another interim unknown. What do? We multiply by the mole ratio. So I'm going to multiply by moles of hydrochloric acid, which is 2. That's my unknown. 2 moles of HCl divided by moles of my known. What was my known? Zinc. That's only 1. What happens when I do that? Moles of zinc cancel. Moles of hydrochloric acid is left. Moles of hydrochloric acid is what I want. So I'm going to go ahead and do that calculation. And when I report it to 2 decimal places, I get 1.52 moles of hydrochloric acid. Now, once again, this is an interim, right? It's an interim unknown. So I'm going to use a purple box to show that. And that answer becomes my known for the next step. That answer becomes my known for the next step. And so I end up with 1.52 moles of hydrochloric acid. Now, just like before, right? I'm here, moles. I'm moving to grams. I'm going to multiply by molar mass, right? So that means I'm going to need the molar mass of hydrochloric acid. And that molar mass of hydrochloric acid is 36.461 grams per mole. So I'm going to multiply by that, 36.461 grams per mole of hydrochloric acid. When I do that, the moles cancel. I'm left with grams. Grams is what I wanted. So I do that calculation, and when I round it to 2 decimal places, I get 55.42 grams of hydrochloric acid, and that is what I wanted. All right, so when you go back and look at this, this is my original known, this is my original unknown, right? Then my moles of known becomes here, right? Then my moles of the unknown goes to there, right? So just follow the colors and you'll see how it all fits together. So now it's time to do the practice and check in the answer checker. Check as you go. Don't wait until the end.